But I think for today, we want to look at the aspect of self-care, how to embrace the issue or the aspect of self-care as we are progressing in our research journey. I'm not sure, subject to correction, I think this month is been the health and wellness month, if I'm not mistaken. So, but it depends with the institutions and so on. But at the same time, as we are looking at that wellness, we need also to incorporate the issue of self-care, which is very important, and especially as postgraduate students, okay? We need also to incorporate that aspect, okay? So the topic for today is going to be more about self-care, especially during our journey in regards to research. I've just put some of the outcomes, okay? Because I believe that for me, when I put the outcomes, when other colleagues will put outcomes as per slides, I don't do that, okay? Because I'll end up having maybe 8 or 10 outcomes, it's too much. But in overall, these are the outcomes which I expect us to meet by today. The first one, just to understand what self-care is all about, all right? And also, remember that when you talk about self-care, we cannot talk about self-care without talking about mindfulness, all right? We are going to share some of the aspects in regards to the mindfulness, because for me, they go hand in hand. So I'm going to share some of those aspects and giving some practical examples, especially from the research perspective. And also, I want us to understand the benefits of taking these aspects seriously, especially the self-care and the mindfulness. What are the benefits as a student who are progressing in our academic studies, especially in postgraduate and so on? And also understand the consequences, all right? What are the results if you don't practice, especially self-care? What will happen to you as a student if you don't practice self-care? Because what I've realized is that as I'm receiving most of my students' work, I can pick up the aspect to say our students are a bit overwhelmed, all right? Because remember that the student we are having, some of my students, some of you guys presently, you are working and studying. Others definitely are studying on a full-time basis. But remember that if you are working or doing other aspects, and at the same time you are studying for this postgraduate level and so on, we also expect you, all right, to do your other parts, all right? For example, if you are in a certain environment or in a certain institution and working there, they expect you also to deliver, okay? And what I've noticed personally, there are institutions, even though I'm not sure about now this challenges in regards to economic situation in South Africa. I think there are still some of the institutions. There are some of the organizations, could be private organizations, which encourages their employees to further their studies. And they also even give them time off and so on, maybe in the once a week or maybe over the weekends and so on. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that they don't want you to be productive and meet the targets of the organization. You still have to meet those targets. The same thing with higher institutions. We encourage our students and our colleagues to further their studies, hopefully up to a PhD level. But at the same time, we also expect them to perform in their different duties. So self-care, it comes a long way in that aspect. So you need to encompass this concept of self-care. Okay. I like it the way Patel states it. Patel states that people are feeling lonelier, in others, we are feeling more lonely, if I can put it that way, all right? And less able to unwind, and sometimes to slow down. I don't expect the postgraduate students to slow down during the academic year. It's difficult, okay? Because if you start to slow down, what's going to happen? It means you're not going to meet the deadlines, okay? But she further says that, which makes most students, most people, to feel more anxious and overwhelmed. Sometimes you become more overwhelmed by small tasks. I don't know in your case, I've experienced that. Sometimes we have to do a very small task, but because there are backlogs, there are a lot of things which I have to deal with, even that small task, sometimes find that you're not able to complete it, okay? So the choice self-care will come there. If I may ask you guys now, simple, how many of you guys have spent 2 hours trying to write at least a paragraph. And when you realize after that 2 hours, you are not able to come with a paragraph, especially those who are doing their master's and their PhD. It happens. So what you normally do in that situation, okay? Here you are, you have sat for almost 2 hours and try to write something in regards to this section or this aspect, but you're not able even to come with a paragraph. And what we normally do, I've seen it with myself, you become frustrated, okay? And when you become frustrated, what you normally do, you feel that things are not going your own way. And you even ask yourself, why did I put myself through all these processes? Instead of saying, okay, hopefully maybe I'm not able to come with this content which I've planned to have within these 2 hours. Maybe let me just park it, all right? Maybe for a few hours, or a few minutes. Maybe when I come back, I'll be able to be more energized, okay? Because sometimes it's almost like if I talk to my undergraduate students, they always like to quantify things, okay? If they are saying to themselves they are revising for a test or an exam, what they do, they quantify. But at the end, you may find that a student has achieved nothing. But if you put a focus, something which you want to achieve within that 1 hour, you'll be able to do more. But one thing which I want to talk about, I think I've mentioned it maybe in passing, but I want just to emphasize it. We do these mistakes, all right? And maybe you have not done that mistake. But sometimes we have all of this memorandum of understanding with our supervisors, of which is good. You sit down with your supervisor, then you put the plan, then you indicate your expectation from the supervisor, then the supervisor also indicates their expectation from you as a candidate, master's or PhD student or a master's or an honors student, okay? It's good. But do we normally sit down and do that memorandum of understanding with our close family members? Do we normally do that? And that's where you find that through the process or the journey of research, sometimes we find that there are a lot of conflicts. There are a lot of aspects which are not going well in regards to the different relationships, especially when you are pursuing a postgraduate studies, because we didn't sit down and do that memorandum of understanding. Then my advice is that when you pursue any postgraduate study, sit down with the immediate people in your life. It could be your children, could be a spouse, whoever. Share with them what you are pursuing to do, and also indicate your goals, and also the expectation from them, okay? And also the outcome. What will be the outcome of this journey which we are undertaking, all right? And all those things need to be clearly presented, because if you don't do that, in between, you may find that you are doing your master's. Within 6 months, there is already tensions, because there was no memorandum of understanding. But if you have it, you are able to safeguard some of unnecessary tensions in between. And it also assists you so that even in that memorandum of understanding, people know when you are saying you are not able to do other aspects during certain times, because you'll be busy with this engagement, okay? And I've seen it, all right? In the past, especially in my 2 postgraduate studies, what I used to do, I will make sure that at least I'll engage starting from late January, hopefully around about the 16th of January, until the 15th or until the 15th of December every year. After that, I don't touch anything, because remember that in between you have other things to work with. So you need also to say, okay, this is my self-care time now. I've been busy for the whole year. Now I need to relax. And also tied easily within my academic studies with my supervisors, because I know that my supervisors, 2 of them, the masters and PhD, they will never touch my work after the 15th of December. They will never, okay? Because they were not available. So it also gives me time to look at other things. So that memorandum of understanding, colleagues, it works better. Okay. And the other thing which is very important, I know, if you are working or you are involved in a certain environment, people will ask you about the progress of your work. They'll ask you, how far are you? Remember that people are aware, especially if, for example, they've been shared in some of the meetings and so on, that you are pursuing these postgraduate studies. They'll keep on asking you, okay, how do you handle that aspect? What I've realized, most people, what they normally do, when you're asking them about their progress in their academic work, they don't enjoy it. You ask a person for the first time, then the person will give you a better outcome. Say, I'm doing this now and that and that and that. You ask the person for the fifth time, the person will start to avoid you. So what you normally do now, you don't ask them, because at the end of the day, it means you're giving more pressure to them. But at the same time, what I will advise is that if people are asking you about the progress of your work, don't put them aside, because remember that some of them have traveled the journey. Hopefully, one of them will say, maybe let's sit down. Let's go and have something, all right? Maybe at the cafeteria and so on, so that you just talk. Then the person will be able to share some of her own experience or his own experience, and how you can maybe look if you can also encompass that. Because we have a tendency of giving up, okay? And it goes two ways. I'm not sure in your case, maybe you advise me. I've seen that happening. The feedback we get from our supervisors. You know, I remember in my journey, there were times I didn't want to receive any email. When I look at this email from this person, it takes me a day or two to open it. Okay, it's almost like currently what's happening. Most of us, when you receive the private calls, what you normally do, we ignore them, is it? All right? Especially if you don't know where that's come from. The same thing with our academic journey. You say, no, I'm not going to open this email. Because already what you are doing, you are preempting the feedback not to be good. Okay? So what's important as a student, you need to embrace some of these things. I know it's not good to embrace the feedback, but when you look at it in holistic, it also assists you not to be more overwhelmed, because at the end of it, you're able to look at it in a positive way. It's almost like self-care. If you have all this misconception about yourself, you end up doubting yourself. You need to start to look at the positive aspects. Well, there are various authors who describe the concept self-care, and I thought that the prominent one, which I think all the description of self-care could also be aligned to, is the one from the World Health Organization, okay, where they define self-care as the ability of individuals, families, and communities to promote health, prevent disease, maintain health, and cope with illness and also disability, with or without the support of a health worker. Remember that what they are saying here, the World Health Organization, is that self-care could also be initiated. It could be initiated, okay? And how do you make sure that you follow the process of self-care? Do you wait to have stress or to have burnout? Do you wait for that? It's not supposed to be like that. It's something which needs to be there in our calendars, okay? It needs to be there. And like I've said, that you will see in one of my slides, I've said self-care processes or aspects are not supposed to be costly. You're not supposed to spend any amount of money on it. It's not supposed to be like that. Because once you spend, you end up being even overwhelmed by the monetary aspect you're putting in. Okay? Because now you are spending money on something which you could do it freely. You can do it without spending any amount of money. You'll see when we talk about the aspect of mindfulness practices, to say there's no need for us to spend money in some of those mindful practices or examples, or some on how to can ensure that we have a better mindfulness practice. You don't have to spend any amount of money. But if you look at this definition of World Health Organization, it points out that It is more about everything that is associated with physical healthy. Remember that if I'm not healthy physically, then it's going to translate also to my mind, to the emotions, and so on. So I won't be able to do anything. Okay? If my body cannot carry me, definitely I won't be able to do anything. How many of us have you realized that? You plan, you have all of these diaries. You put things to say, next week I'll do A, B, C, D. Then you start to be weak in regards to your health. Then you're able not to do anything. Everything is put aside. Because remember that if the physics is not there, your body cannot carry you. You cannot do anything. So in order for you to progress in regards to academic research, you need to make sure that you look at your health. All right? And also includes the aspect of hygiene, the nutrition. Maybe we'll talk about a little bit about nutrition. I'm not good in those aspects, but also the aspect of medical care. Basically, all of these aspects you need to take in order to manage the numerous stressors in your life. In other words, if you don't take some of these aspects into consideration, the hygiene, the nutrition, your physical health, and also the medical care, it could bring some stress into you as a person. And you end up not progressing well in your academic journey. So we like to say, we don't have a guarantee, but at least if something happens in between, you are able to recover quickly. Okay, there are other things definitely which could affect your journey. All right, because we always say any postgraduate study, it has a story to tell. Whether starting from honors up to PhD, you'll have a story to tell. Okay. But self-care does differ from person to person and from the context to context. Okay. Maybe I may understand self-care differently from you, all right? Or within my context. And you may also understand self-care differently from me, all right? Because you base it in your own context. But it does differ. In other words, we cannot do the same thing and we say we are taking care of ourselves, right? Because if you look at self-care concept, it is more of a generational concept. It's not only touching only one generation, all the generations, okay? And I can share this with you guys. I think some few months or even, some almost 2 to 3 years, I was commuting with a private transport. And what I would realize, where I'm coming from, honestly, I like to talk, even though sometimes I'm not an extrovert, but I just like to talk. You get in this public space, we try to greet a person or people. People, they just keep quiet. Okay? They just keep quiet. And sometimes you feel bad. See, what's happening here? Are people angry? No, people are not angry. People are trying to take care of themselves. And I've learned to say there are people who regard themselves as morning people or persons. Others, they say, no, I'm not a morning person. And I'm telling you, if a person says, I'm not a morning person, you are not going to have a conversation with that person. So we need to understand that the spaces and the context of self-care, it differs. And now it's even worse, especially since COVID. We are able to sit and put our earphones. People are listening to their stuff. Some of them, maybe they are doing some meditations and so on. Or maybe they are listening to a certain song, or maybe they are listening to a certain talk and all of this. And it makes them better. And it makes them to be more alert throughout the whole day. So self-care, it needs something which always going to differ from person to person. Okay? Others will make noise in the morning. Okay? You wake up, or even before you can wake up, already there's a noise which is surrounding you. And sometimes we say people are disturbing us. Maybe it's a self-care, I don't know. Okay? But if you look at Amsterdam, also states that when we are regularly taking care of ourselves, we are better able to react to the things that go on in our lives. Remember that sometimes all these tensions which we are experiencing in different environments is because we don't encompasses or embrace the concept of self-care. And we can eliminate them, okay? So that it's quite difficult to understand a human nature or a person. It's difficult, okay? That's why in some of the spaces, we always make sure that we just check on what we are saying, because sometimes can trigger a wrong button, okay? So you're always being more conscious. But if you can look at a study by Miles and colleagues, they alluded to the meaning of self-care as the self-initiated behavior that people choose to incorporate to promote good health and general well-being. And the study authors added, in this study, the authors added that it is about being healthy, but also about incorporating common strategies to deal with work stressors. How do we deal with the work stressors? And I think it also comes to us, or even to you as a postgraduate student. It's where sometimes we feel that your expectation and the expectation of the organizations are not the same. The organization says to you, we want to meet a certain target in regards to our postgraduate students, and we are part of them. And they can even give you scholarship, okay? They can even give you scholarship if you are operating in some of the institutions, okay? But at the same time, your well-being is not being catered for. Or they expect you to reach these outcomes, but at the same time, as a student, you also have to make sure that you pursue your studies. Because remember that if they give you scholarship and you are not able to complete anything regarding that scholarship, you must pay back. So you're pushing yourself, okay? And the organization also needs outcomes. So how do you balance? How to make sure that you take care of yourself as a human being then? How to make sure that you don't become more overwhelmed? And I'm not talking about the external aspect, all right? We have families, we have siblings, we have all of this. You are also expected to play a part there. So now it becomes more a challenge to you. So self-care, I think the way it's been described, we need to understand to say it's about looking at individually, and it also needs to be something which is more individualistic, okay? Because at the end of the day, you want to achieve certain goals around it. Well, there are different categories. Well, maybe there are more than 3, but all of them that have been grouped into emotional self-care is one of them. We have the physical self-care, we have the mental self-care, okay? But when you look at the emotional self-care, it refers to all aspects that can make you to relax, okay? And also allow to give yourself the time to decompress. In other words, you are able to be yourself, okay? That's why it encompasses aspects like self-talk. And I think self-talk also goes a long way, because it's also associated with the mindset, okay? So you need to look at self-talk from those aspects. By self-talk, we say you have to say as individual, I'm not going to allow negative aspects in my life, especially in this chain, but not neglecting some of the important aspects in your life. Because sometimes when you don't balance these things, you may end up losing almost everything. And also say a lot no to all the things that may cause you unnecessary stress. I know that it's a simple concept to put in, especially the one which are referred to no, right? But what are those things? Because some of the things, definitely, when you look at them, especially as a postgraduate student, we entertain them more. And when after some time you say, but why should I have entertained this aspect? And you end up looking at your academic journey, it also being compromised. And also do something that could make you happy. All right? Something which can make you distressed a little bit. That's self-care. What are the things which can make you happy? What are the things which make you happy? What are the things which can make you at least to distress a little bit? And like I've said previously, those aspects are not supposed to be costly, honestly. Well, we know. I'm not trying to blame anyone else. We like to put things up. Okay? Yeah, I think nowadays we are on that platform, right? We have our social media, we have all those platforms. Let's use them. Let's embrace them. But if I can say to you, the easiest way, which makes me to distress, is to have enough sleep. Someone won't believe that, and someone won't see as an aspect which can distress you. But if I can say, for me to have more self-care, and I believe this aspect distresses me more, I always like to take long holidays. And I also put some of the pictures around that. People are going to believe me, and people are going to envy me, honestly. Is it? That's how we are. But at the end of the day, you may find out after that outcome, there was nothing which has to do with self-care. You are not even distressed. You are even worse, by the way. I don't want to be negative, but honestly, what I'm trying to say is that let's do something. Well, it could be costly, but it should not be overwhelmingly costly. Okay? It's not something which, when you come back, you even regret. No, it's something which you need to embrace. Something you can even do it almost every day. But the physical self-care part of it is an aspect such as investing in good sleep. I'm not sure if you believe in that. A little bit of exercise, that routine, okay? And maybe opting for good and healthy food, which I'm also struggling with that, honestly. But what I'm trying to say, your physical self-care. How about sleeping? Okay? Maybe you'll say, welcome, it's because you're not doing some of these projects we are doing. But I still believe that a good sleep will do. A good sleep. And I mean by good sleep where you don't even think about the projects. You don't even have to think about the projects. And I'm telling you, it's obvious. After that and good sleep, when you start to work on the projects, the following day and so on, you will be able to see more progress. You may agree with me or disagree with me. We went through COVID. It came to a surprise to everyone. We didn't expect it, honestly. It just came to a surprise. The country was closed. We have to do things online, for argument's sake. Those who are working, we have to work from home. And if you look at pre-COVID, those who were having access to the laptops and so on, they were carrying them to home every day. But people were not working. Well, maybe in your case, because honestly, it's an open distance learning institution, definitely you were doing what you are doing currently, even before COVID. There's an argument we get, and I agree with that argument. But in some of the institutions, we started to do these things during COVID. I used to carry my laptop home every day, and I will never even go online and check the work-related aspect. But currently, I carry the same laptop at home. I work. Why is this now different? And that's why we know now the problem of self-care, it's an issue. The wellness, it's an issue. You're on recess, for argument's sake, those who are employed. maybe as an academic, you spend 3 weeks mid-year recess, almost 3 weeks to 4 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. But you work, and you're supposed to be on recess. Well, those who are more spiritual, right, and believe in just certain religion and so on, you also have what called spiritual self-care. Spending quality time in nature, keeping a journal, which I'm not good in that, but it's one of the aspects which can also embrace nowadays. Okay, doing a little bit of meditation, practice organized religion. I think it also assists us in regards to spiritual self-care. The other category is about mental self-care. Do things that stimulate your mind. How do you normally encompass that in our research journey? I'm looking at my master's students here, for argument's sake, and my PhD students. How many of us, when you are busy working on your project, at the same time, you are reading a certain book? It's so difficult, is it? But how can you encompass that? Maybe during your self-care process, you read just a paragraph or a chapter of a book. I like this example, learning a new language. It also assists. A skill. Something which has nothing to do with your research project. There are a lot of skills you can learn. But remember that if you have a good mental self-care and you embrace it, and you do something which is going to challenge your mind, you become a better student or a postgraduate student. Okay, I think I got is Jabulile. Yes. Oh, Jabulisile. Yeah, thanks, Jabulisile. Yes. Let's hear you now.
Good morning, colleagues. The comment that I have is that, firstly, I would like to thank you very much for the information that you have given us, because you make us to be aware that the only thing that we have more than any other thing that we may accumulate is self. And thank you very much. This, I hope, is going to help us in different aspects of life. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for that input, Jabulisile. I also appreciate that. And I know that in your context, but we do have it, because I know that institutions, they have, most of the institutions, they have what you call the wellness day. Yeah, we need also to take part in those wellness days if you are around the institution, so that you distress a little bit, and it does assist, because remember that what I'm looking at here, just to add a few points, I don't see any hand. What I'm looking here, you are writing this document and you are getting feedback after feedback from the supervisor. And you find that sometimes the feedback does not even add up, okay? Because you've put your all in the document, if I can put it that way. So you don't know what else can you do, okay? And it's in that spirit where you find that some of our students, what they normally do, they don't even work on the feedback in details. They skip some of the feedbacks, okay? But if you can just say, maybe let me just take a little bit of a back seat and pause, just to pause. And remember, guys, when I talk about self-care and pausing, you need to plan it, please. It's not something which just need to happen because now today I want to encompass the spirit of self-care. No, plan it. And if you plan it in the correct way, when you come back, you feel that you are a better student now. You can even see the progress in your academic journey. Because the journey, colleagues, Maybe some of you have not experienced it. I know that in our midst here, we have some PhD candidates or students. They'll attest to that. This journey is lonely. It's good in honors. I like the honors because sometimes we have a collective projects and so on and all of this. And also maybe in masters. But the master's program we are doing currently, it's a full dissertation. In the past, definitely, it was a master's with coursework. So you know that when you are doing the coursework or the modules, you'll meet with other peers or colleagues in the lecture sessions and all of those things. Then you start maybe to drift a little bit for that mini dissertation. But currently, it's a full dissertation. So it means that journey is even lonely again. So how do you come back? You say, okay, I'm pursuing these postgraduate studies. It's a lonely process, but let me just try and look back on how I can get support. How can I go and maybe raise my hand? Okay, that's why I was saying that, especially in some of the spaces, whether it's not working environment, whether it's outside the work environment, people are going to ask you, how far are you with your research journey? Okay, and sometimes we feel that I don't want any people to ask me this thing now. And that's where you say now, no, let me just go back and look what makes me not enjoying what I am doing now. Okay, I'm not sure, guys. When I was preparing this session, I have a lot of things in my mind. And yeah, it was a tough session to prepare. Okay. But of this, where in the heading there, I've said what could be considered self-care and what not. In other words, what are the things which can be considered as self-care and what are those which cannot be considered as self-care? As you know, since every person has their own definition of self-care, therefore self-care should be something that brings you joy. Can underline that one. Fulfillment, and also allows you to distress, especially in the long run. That could be self-care. It's something you enjoy, it brings joy to you, you become fulfilled if you've done that aspect, and also you'll realize a little bit of being distressed. Then that could be regarded as self-care. Well, these are the examples, where there could be a lot of examples. Okay. If I say as welcome, I believe that self-care for me is about buying clothes. Maybe every day or every week. That's self-care. That's my belief. Because it brings me joy. It makes me to be fulfilled. It also makes me to distress. It's okay. But to other people, that type, an example of self-care, of buying clothes, they can regard it in a different way. Others are saying, maybe you're too spendthrift, or you like to show off. So where do you stand as an individual? If this aspect makes you happy, and you always become distressful after you've done it, why not do it? Because it's your self-care. Colleagues, I'm just bringing these things. There are lots of them, all right? I don't want to talk about other things, okay? I think you've just read between the lines, okay? But honestly, who are we to judge? If I like to pamper myself, okay? Especially if you can look there, the next picture there. And make sure that my nails are colorful. Is there anything wrong? If I go for manicure, then I know that also men, they go for manicure nowadays. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? But for others, this makes me to be who I am. This makes me to be more distressful if I do this, if I go for a manicure. It makes me happy. I get fulfillment. But to others, they may say, we are indulging. Okay, others, they can use the terms which I don't like to use, all right? But does it matter? Does not matter. That's self-care, colleagues. That's self-care. I know that in between these two examples, there's financial aspects involved. But if you are able to take care of that and don't feel bad, why not? We need to remember that self-care does not have to cost us anything. It is supposed to be the things that we enjoy. In these two examples, definitely I'm going to spend 1 or 2 rands, okay? But you're enjoying it. I can come with another example of self-care, like I've mentioned. Maybe I take my I do my self-care by walking around the campus for 5 to 10 minutes. It doesn't cost me anything, but it has a huge benefits. Well, this concept of self-care is more subjective, honestly. We do things, others they look at it in a different way. But you know on which space you are, on which self-care you want to make sure that you take care of. You need to get started and have a self-care routine. Where do you start? Identify the activity that brings you joy and invest your energy towards it. I think you need to start small. Okay? If you start a self-care activity, you just start it at a small scale and include that activity into your daily task. We have colleagues here. Always they are behind their laptops in their offices. What do you normally do to take care of yourself? Don't you stand up and go and stand? Maybe if you are so lucky, if you have the campus you are working in, there are some trees, just go and stand under the tree. And it does work. Okay? We just go and stand under the tree. Or you take a walk. So how do you make sure that it becomes a routine? I do it sometimes. And I think most of the time I do it. Because sometimes I sit, you find that you are trying to work on something else and nothing is coming. What do you normally do? Am I going to sit there behind this laptop and stress myself? No, I just close the office and go. Spend 10 or 15 minutes and come back. And sometimes when you come back, you are more refreshed. Then you are able to do things in a different way. And even the progress you are able to account for. I think we need to work on that activity for a week. And remember that some of the self-care routines we have, some of us, we subscribe to the different health organizations where you go to a gym and so on. I've never been to a gym, honestly, colleagues. All right, it's fine with me. But my understanding is that I should not put myself under pressure. That's why when I see it, maybe especially on TV and so on, when they start some of these things, when you are a new recruitee and so on, what they do, they start you in a small routine, you know. You do this thing and that thing, and until you gradually do the bigger aspect. What's the reason for that? Because they don't want you to be discouraged. The same thing with us when we start to have our own individual self-care routines. Start in a smaller way. And also, maybe after 3 days or 4 days or a week, why don't you reflect? How do you feel now? Do you think this self-care routine works for you? If your answer is yes, then you can try to extend it now. Okay? Maybe you are doing it maybe for a few minutes per day, then we can include hours and see how far it goes. Then you can also start to add more practice, right? And like I've said here, I think it's very important. You are not in competition, remember. Okay? And you don't have to account to anyone else. But your academic journey in regards to writing and so on is going to say a lot. You'll see that as a student, there's a lot of progress since you started to be involved in this type of self-care routine. And in most cases, when you get some of the feedback from the supervisor, the emails, you start to open them. Okay, you don't even avoid them. Because I want to say to these guys, one thing which I've realized, I'm not trying to talk badly about my students, but you give a feedback today to a student, okay? Then a student is going to take another 2 months to respond to your feedback. What we say as a supervisor, do you think that in these 2 months the student was working on the comments? My answer is no. The student was not working on the comments. You may find that the students start to work on the comments 2 days or 3 days before the students submit the reports to you again. Can you see? So, and all of these things, we may think that our students are not doing what they're supposed to do, but there is a vacuum. There's something which is missing there. And if that thing is missing, definitely there won't be progress. There won't be progress. Okay, I think the last point there, I've said, if you realize that nothing is doable, you can also join some of the community spaces and extend your practice to close associates. If you feel that this individual planned self-care routine is not working for you, why don't you join others? Because you can see that I have this identified activity which I want to do in order to address the issue of self-care, and I have a routine, but it's not working for me. Why don't you join others or invite others? What are the consequences? Well, there are lots, colleagues, and especially in our research journey, if we don't practice self-care, there are a lot of consequences. And I don't want to talk about this one. Students, they end up dropping out from their academic journey or their studies. They found it not worthwhile. Okay? And especially like we indicated earlier, it's a journey where you travel it alone. And if you don't get support, and I know that my supervisors, most of them, if they see that their students are not progressing well, they always like to have a one-on-one talk with them. And it works. Because I can't sit with the student here and I can see the student is not progressing. Maybe we need to call a student. Let's talk and see. Okay? But there are some of the consequences, there are a lot of them, colleagues. I've just put them in this slide. There will be a lot of low energy. You find that you don't even enjoy what you are doing. And like I've said in one of the presentations, if you can spend a week as a postgraduate student without doing anything in your research project, it means there's something which is not going well. There should be something. You end up having a lot of less patience. Why? As small things, it triggers bigger aspects. The colleagues at the work environment, you are not even able to relate to. You are not even able to relate to your supervisor. When you respond to the emails, the tone is not so good. It also has some physical aspect. It can also increase to headaches, stomach aches, other physical symptoms of stress, and also difficulty to fall asleep. Okay? And those are the things which says there's something I need to do here. I can't rely on taking some pills so that I will be able to sleep. Then it's a problem, especially if they're not prescribed by the medical fraternity. Then there's a problem. It means there's something which is happening which needs to be addressed. Well, sometimes you end up having challenge in choosing healthy food, right? And you end up eating comfort food. Well, I always say to myself, in regards to the aspect of food, I don't want to commit myself because we encourage healthy, good food. But the socio-economic situation does not allow, honestly. That one's a fact, okay? It's a fact. Well, those who have some few guidance in their spaces, well done, okay? But it also can lead to worsening mental health symptoms, depression, and anxiety. We have a problem. It's not a problem. Well, it's a good aspect, which especially the government have put in place, if I'm not mistaken. We have what you call the National Development Plan 2030. I think you have read about it, most of you. Okay? Where we say by 2030, we should have raised the output of our PhD to a certain percentage. But I want to say to you guys, that target, when I've read some of the research, is not going to be realized. It's not. It's not going to be realized. That percentage which you want to reach by 2030, there's no way you're going to reach that percentage. And the reason is because our postgraduate students are being overwhelmed, colleagues. I'm not saying I'm an advocate of them, but we expect them to do so much. We expect them to do so much. It's good. Are we giving them enough support? Are supervisors coming in, honestly? Yes, our supervisors are doing the greatest job. But if you can look at the student-supervisor ratio, you get surprised. And self-care, if we don't look at it, you know, our different journeys are being influenced by small things. Small things can create a huge aspect. And if we don't look at it, and when a student, especially as postgraduate, says, I'm anticipating to give up on this study. What do I think as a supervisor? The student's giving up, so what? We don't look at the inner aspect. To say, okay, the student is anticipating to give up. What the damage it has caused to the student? Maybe the student already is on depression and also anxiety and all of those things. How to make sure that when the student give up, you don't get negative aspects from the student or the negative outcome. Because remember that, colleagues, I think you will agree with me. Postgraduate study, it's not an individual journey. It's not for you alone. It encompasses all the people around you. All the people around you. Already people know that you are pursuing a master's, a PhD, or honors degree. So if you are not going to show up, what's going to happen? Well, you can also feel hopeless. And sometimes you may find that if you encompass self-care, this hopeless, you are able to overcome. Because because you also look at your mindset. You say, okay, welcome. This part, I'm not doing well on this section of my research. How best can I do in this aspect? Because the mindset, it's one of the things which we need to look at. Okay. Well, we'll talk about a little bit about burnout, and it can also lead to concentration level to drop. Okay. I'm not sure about this point where it talks about strain or distancing in the relationship. Well, I've just put spouse or partner. I know that some of us who don't have spouse, who don't have partners, and so I'm just put it in general. But it does affect the relationship. Whether with your children, with your siblings, and so on. It does. And I think in order to make sure that does not come to that point, that memorandum of understanding must be there. It also reduces performance at work. Okay, those who are working, less motivation to engage in social activities. You are sitting with this project, colleagues. Okay, you are trying to pursue this master's, PhD, or honors project, especially master's and PhD, and there's no progress here. What you normally do, you end up isolating yourself. You don't isolate yourself maybe with people at the work environment if you are working. You even isolate yourself within the household. So how do you overcome that aspect? I think I've mentioned it. Take a little bit of a pause. Maybe 2 days or 3 days. I know that we have deadlines to meet. I know. But 2 or 3 days, doing nothing on your academic topic. Nothing. Okay? And try to reflect a little bit. And ask yourself deep questions. Because sometimes we may do some of these aspects. Maybe we've taken a wrong project. You know, when you start about the project and the time, you feel about bright things about it. You know, you have all of these ideas. I'm going to add this and this and this. But when you start to actually work on the research report itself, you may find that your ideas are just all over the place. They have nothing to do with this project. And those are the things which makes you sometimes, as a postgraduate student, whatever feedback you get, you become frustrated about it. Say, I don't know what this supervisor wants now, because I've done this and this and that. You see? So that's why I'm saying maybe a little bit. Say, all right, these 2 days, I'm not going to do anything about my research project. I just want to take care of myself. Identify an aspect which you'll be doing. It should not be costly, but it should be an aspect or an activity which will make you better. So that when you come back after 2 or 3 days, you'll be able to match on your academic topic or your academic project. You will feel better. Okay? And I'm telling you, if you do it once, then it becomes a recurring. You'll realize that you are enjoying this project of yours. Yes, there will be challenges there and there, correction and all of those, but you are enjoying it. You are even able to articulate it. You know, when people are asking you, how far are you? You are able to talk. But if we don't start to do some of those aspects, colleagues, they could have negative impact. They could have a lot of negative consequences. Well, I thought when I was looking at some of the material, we can't talk about self-care without talking about the issue of stress and burnout. I know that I'm not an expert on this aspect, but I just want to touch on them quickly. We all know what stress is all about, all right? Well, we sometimes use the word stress loosely, if I would put in that way. For example, if I'm welcome, in the second week of the month, I'm running running out of money, what Jumal say? I'll say I'm stressed. But the fact is that you ran out of money, welcome. You're not stressed. Okay. Sometimes you use this concept loosely. But what is stress? It's defined as something that happens when there is an imbalance between individual needs. When we talk about stress, it means there are some imbalances between their needs, knowledge, and skills. And if those imbalances happen, and you can't also satisfy them, then you become more stressed. Then you say you have stress. Because you have all of these needs, but you can't satisfy them. You end up being stressed, is it? But I like the concept which says prolonged stress can also lead to burnout. In other words, what comes first? It's stress, then burnout, then all the anxiety. Depression, I think, is the last one. You know, when we've been diagnosed with depression, that's why you end up being in huge medication. Sometimes they even admit you. And we don't want our students to be there. All right? It can happen, but we don't want you guys to be there. But what's burnout? It's complete and continuing depletion of mental, emotional, and physical energy. In other words, now, this stress is too much now. Then it leads to burnout. And sometimes, if I was just thinking about the purpose of having recess in academia. Why do we have recess? In South Africa, we have 4 recess. Okay? Because we have 4 terms, or yeah, there are 4. In other countries, definitely it's only 3, because they have 3 terms. Okay? But look at recess. What's the purpose of having recess? Because the study has shown us that hopefully after 3 months, you're now feeling overwhelmed. You feel tired. So that's why you need to have this recess. All right? Just to go and rewind a little bit and come back and continue. And this burnout definitely is due to unrealistic expectation and overcommitment. I like the word unrealistic expectation. Okay? How do you start as a student to say, I want to do a postgraduate studies? Where does it start? Maybe it's a research other people need to do. Because I'm not trying to discourage my students. Some students, when they do their undergraduate, it's good. Some of them, they don't even have plan to do postgraduate studies. But when they perform good in the academic studies, the grades are good, the percentage are good, and it allows them to do their honors and so on. A person will say, I'm doing honors now. But initially, it was not a plan. Initially, it was not a plan. Just because the results are so good, now I'm getting to an honors. Then you get to an honors program, and all to find that definitely there is a lot of imbalances. You are not ready for it. Okay? You didn't plan to. Colleagues, I'm not trying to discourage people, honestly. Okay? You may find that maybe you're not ready to do your honors program next year. Maybe after 2 years, you are ready. Because remember that now it's a new program. The demands are high. It's also on a certain NQF level. So the work is in-depth. And you didn't plan for it. You didn't sit down. And once all these things unfold in front of you, you start to have all of these aspects. You end up being isolated. You dislike the program. You end up having stress, and stress can lead to burnout to depression. Because you didn't plan it. That's why I always say to my students, let's plan this thing. Sometimes you do things because, okay, all right, I've got my 60% in masters. Oh, let me go for PhD. Only to find that honestly, you didn't sit down and sometimes we also come because you give us a very good proposal and you said it's doable. And say, all right, here is the ethics clearance, we give it to you as a student, do your PhD. Then we now come to academic writing. It's where we start now to realize and we start to fight and realize that to say, this thing is a bit too much for me. So that's why I'm trying to say we need to sometimes look at some of these things, especially unrealistic expectation. And sometimes it's a matter of overcommitment. It can also lead to burnout. When I talk about mindfulness, that's one of the slides in this presentation. You realize that mindfulness for me, it says, welcome, stop, and be still and focus on one aspect. One aspect only. Okay? And especially our students most of the time. Others, definitely, they do all of this postgraduate studies already are working. Others, they are not even working. But if you start to overcommit beyond the program and the work-related aspects, there will be a lot of things which are not going well. Because also the overcommitment aspect we have, you need to have outcomes and also must reach some goals around that. And we also want you here in our postgraduate to show progress in your academic writing. Your employer also wants you also to meet the targets. Well, few aspects in regards to the sources of burnout and how the feeling goes in regards to that. Work overload can also lead to a bit of burnout. Lack of control, maybe insufficient reward can also lead to burnout. I'm not sure in your case, colleagues, when we give students feedback in their academic writing, sometimes we always like to give feedback in one aspect. And then we say, make sure that you correct the rest of the document. You know what's going to happen? Sometimes if you don't read the rest of the document as a supervisor, you are not even able to pick up positive aspects from the students. And that's why the students sometimes feel not rewarded. But if you read the whole document of a student, okay, then you identify positive academic writing from the student. You need to talk about that. That's a reward. You need to say something. You need to make sure that you compliment the student. Because if the student read that feedback, the student will realize that, yes, I think my supervisor only sometimes look at the good things which I'm bringing to the project. And that also, it talks a lot to the self-esteem of the student or the candidate or the master's or PhD student and so on. It says to a student, yes, I think there are things which I can do better on this project. And even my supervisor recognized that. Just to say something about that paragraph, if it's well written, you know, it goes a long way. Because sometimes you find that some of these things, they come because we don't reward our students. Well, there are a lot of feelings in regards to burnout. Sometimes you feel exhausted. Sometimes you feel that you're not effective. You feel that there's nothing I'm bringing in this document. I spent 2 hours, 3 hours, but I'm not able to come with at least 2 paragraphs. You feel frustrated, is it? All right? Sometimes you feel hopelessness. You don't see any positive aspects regarding this project. And that's why we say aspects like self-care and mindfulness practices, they can also assist around that a little bit. While there are a lot of self-care plans, okay, in fact, there are lots of them, colleagues, but I've just picked up some of this. I think the first one, which I think I'm more inclined to that one, It has to do with adequate sleep